Welcome to everybody who is either watching or listening on the radio or on a podcast. We welcome you to the Kingdom and its Stories, and also the Hands and Feet of Jesus. And our guest today is Jeannie Marie. And Jeannie, it's wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you
And
so much.
just to remind our viewers of the topic of what we're talking about in this program is we want to interview people like Jeannie who can give us an example and some stories of how we can be Jesus' hands and feet, not as a special event, but as a lifestyle. And so, Jeannie, let's begin by asking you, what's your elevator speech? What do you do?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. So I am an author of Across the Street and Around the World, Following Jesus to the Nations in Your Neighborhood and Beyond. I'm also a course creator and a strategist with an international company that sends people to 50 Muslim countries around the world. And I'm also a mom of four, a wife, a healthcare hero, and of course, beloved daughter of a very important king in a very important kingdom.
Amen.
There you go. That's who I am.
Okay. All right. Well, tell us how God brought you to that place. I mean, it sounds like you're a very, very, very busy person. And I'm amazed at how do you do that being one person? But that's for another time.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right now, just tell us, what is your story? How did God bring you to this point in your life where you have such a passion for people in the world?
Yeah, I've always had, I grew up overseas in the Philippines and in a tribe, actually, on the edge of a mountain. And my parents were translating the Bible. And I grew up just like National Geographic, with the little huts on stilts with pigs and chickens underneath and a monkey for a pet. But when I came back to the States when I was 18, I didn't want to live in a tribe. And even though I had a passion because everything I do is focused on the 3 billion people with least access to Jesus. This is Muslims, Buddhists, tribals. Even though I had that passion, I thought, well, I'm in the US now. I'm not going to live in a tribe. I can't do anything, right? And so for 10 years, I worked in the corporate world, had kids, and it was wonderful. And it's equipped me for what I'm doing now. And then I realized, oh, the nations are coming to us.
Amen.
I'm just an ordinary person, but I can actually do some things right now. And so some of the stories I'll tell later are how I got involved with just regular immigrants and international students and refugees. And then eventually, once we start doing these kinds of ordinary things right here, my husband and I were like, let's change our address. And we sold everything we had. We quit our jobs at 40 and moved to an unengaged people group in India, a Muslim people group. We had to come back earlier than planned. And so that's where I am right now, because God's allowed me all these experiences to be able to help just regular people have a part in reaching some of these 3 billion people who are right next door to us.
Wow. Yeah. Do you have any idea what the statistics are of those representative people in the United States?
Yeah. So actually, there's probably only about 1 to 3% of those 3 billion of, like, let's say Muslims, right?
Okay. All right.
The diaspora, we call them, are actually here. However, they have ties back to their families. They're very strong with their families. And so anything we do here does go back to the original countries and people groups, and international students go back. So it is a small percentage that are here in the US. However, it is a large amount of people, because 3 billion people is a lot of people, right? So
yeah. And they really do have an impact back home.
Absolutely. I mean, Even at my university here, Arizona State University, we have the largest amount of international students, 17,000 international students.
Wow.
Right?
In one university. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're leaders in their country. And so, yeah, we can easily make a friend.
Well, Jeannie, I know that you have put together a list of suggestions that people like me and common folks can read through and get an idea of. These are some of the things that we might be able to do. Tell us about that list and how you came to it, and maybe share some of those pointers with us.
Sure. Yeah, I found that most people, like, we can get all excited about these 3 billion people, but how do we start? Right? How do we start? And I found that if we can just make a friend that is a face of like a Muslim, a Buddhist, or a Hindu, that makes all the difference. And suddenly we're catapulted into relationships and experiences and cross-cultural adventures right here we never knew we could do. And so I just created this 10 ways to make 10 friends in unreached people groups right where you live, even during a pandemic.
Okay.
And so some of those things are pretty easy. Do you want me to start with an easy one, or how I made my very first friend?
Okay.
Would you want to do that one first?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So I knew suddenly that I was like, if I'm going to do this, I don't even know any Muslims, right? And so I just looked up on the internet who's working with refugees. I knew that Iraqi refugees were coming to Phoenix, and I found this name that sounded kind of Arabic, and I called her and I just said, can I just meet you and see how I can help? So I go down to the refugee resettlement agency and I have my 2-year-old daughter in my hand, and I'm terrified. She comes out, her name's Aisha, and she's dressed in black from head to toe.
Okay.
I was 38 years old when I met my first Muslim, even though I've traveled all over the world. And she said,
so even in the Philippines, you were ministering with tribal people who were
right.
not Muslims.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not down south where all the Muslims are. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So she said, she sits me down. Why are you here? And when someone asks you that, that's a really good indication you're in a good place, because you're not where you're supposed to be, and
right.
God may be using you. So I told her, I just said genuinely, like, I've been reading the Bible and it says to love your enemy. And I couldn't think of any enemies except actually Muslims that I don't even know.
Wow, you said that?
I did. 9/11 had just happened, and
and she didn't bring out her scythe and knife.
Yeah. And I said, and I know they're not really my enemies, but I need to make a friend. And also I told her I'm a follower of Jesus, of Isa al-Masih.
So you were right up front with that.
Right up front, yeah.
Okay.
But I love God, and I just want to help. I moved from a different country, and I told her Matthew 25, I'm going to give a cup of cold water in Jesus' name. I just want to help. How can I help the refugees? And she said, after a while, oh, okay, you can help. So I thought, okay, we're going to probably do like a closed.
You're okay. You passed the test.
I was like, okay, maybe we'll do like a closed campaign or a food drive, and then we'll hug all the refugees and go home, right? No. She said, if all you're saying is true, I just met a young widow with a couple small children whose husband was accidentally killed by American soldiers.
Oh, wow.
Nobody else knows this but me. She said, and if what you're saying is true, I want you to come to her apartment with me tomorrow, and I want you to ask forgiveness from people. Yeah. I said, I thought, Lord, can I even do that?
Yeah.
But here's the thing, and I don't want to scare any of you, but here's the thing. It's not scary, because all I did was say yes. And I found that this is when I found that it takes 1,000 steps of yes in an intentional direction to really make a difference. And all I did was say yes. And that catapulted me into a relationships with Iraqi refugees, friendships over several years, where we were studying the Bible together and reading and praying and learning and all these adventures, just by saying one little yes, and then praying and asking God for insight. Wow. And just showing up. Yeah. And so you never know what will happen if you just make a friend, is what I want.
So step one is making a friend?
Step one is making a friend. And now I'll give you some tips on how to do that if you would like. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's the thing, is I always say, and this is what I say over and over, is a Jeannie Marie quote, is start small, start soon, and start somewhere you already are.
Yeah, I didn't get the first one. Start what?
Start small,
Small. Okay.
start soon,
Okay.
and start somewhere you already are.
Okay.
Right.
But
So
in this first example you gave us, you weren't already there.
I was already in Phoenix,
Oh,
and
okay. All right.
yeah, I was already there. And and so one of the things, and I won't go into this more, is to help refugees coming in, right?
Right.
We've got Afghani refugees pouring into our borders now.
Mm-hmm.
All you got to do is call a refugee resettlement agency in your area. You just Google it and
Okay.
say, can I help? And there's people at these refugee resettlement agencies that will help you make a friend, and you don't
So
have to.
if you just do a Google search,
Yeah,
refugee resettlement, that will lead you to a local. Okay.
also in my guide, if you want to download my guide, I will tell you exactly what to Google, where to Google, and give you some examples
Okay.
of
Good.
refugee
Wonderful.
resettlement.
Okay. Before we go any further, how do we get the guide?
Yes. So it's at jeanniemarieacademy.com/10friends, JEANNIE. And an easier way maybe to find it is just to go straight to my website, which is acrossthestreetandaroundtheworld.com. That might be easier to remember.
Good.
Acrossthestreetandaroundtheworld.com, and you'll see that guide there along with lots of other things. But that will give you some insight on how to help refugees coming in. And it's so much because it's practical, hands-on, right?
Right. Good. So, okay. Step 2.
Step 2, eat at ethnic restaurants. Now, anyone can do this, right? Italian doesn't count.
With pleasure.
Yes, Italian doesn't count. Mexican doesn't count.
Okay.
So you just Google ethnic restaurants near me, and go go in the middle of the day when that's a little bit, and make sure there's a sit down, make sure it's not just takeout because of, the pandemic now. And because that's when it'll be slower. Most often these Indian restaurants and Vietnamese and Thai, they're run by families, and you can start conversations with them. And we've done that. We go to some of the same restaurants over and over.
But Jeannie, how do you do that? I mean, you're sitting down at a meal.
Mhm.
And in our culture, you don't just normally walk to the table next to you and introduce yourself. Or do you do that? Is that what you do?
Yeah. So I try to, in these restaurants, I make friends with the owners, with the servers, because
Okay.
servers, you go to an Indian restaurant, they're all going to be Indian, and they're going to be the daughter of the owner.
Okay.
And so I ask, and here's the question on any of these times you meet somebody, even in the grocery store, anywhere, is a very politically correct and wonderful question to ask is, what country is your family originally from?
Okay.
So we don't ask, hey, what country are you from? Where are you from, America? Do you speak English? None of that, because they probably have lived here for a while.
Right.
So, do you have ties back to the country your parents were originally from? And then they'll say, oh yeah, this is, or when I'm in a restaurant, I'll ask, what part of India is this food from? And did your family start this? And so we start talking. I took some people to a restaurant a while back, and I told them, I said, give me 1 hour and we'll be invited into these people. Right? And so I'm just modeling some of the conversation. And so we by the end of the dinner, and we were eating with our hands. So they came over, like, you're eating with your hands. It's so wonderful. It makes me so happy. They had brought us back to the kitchen, had met the chef who was the father and the mom. And and there was one restaurant where we kept going back and back and back, and because it was a country we were going to run a short-term trip to.
Right.
And so eventually we brought all our short-termers, did a special event with the hosts who told us all about the country. And then people from that group started meeting with the owners. So there's a lot more after you make a friend. So you have to read my book and do all the things, but making the friend first. And that's an easy thing to do. It's just.
Okay, good. Let me take opportunity for this little pause to make a station break. Those of you who are listening to the Kingdom and its Stories. those of you who are watching on the Harvest website, the title of our program is The Hands and Feet of Jesus. And so we have Jeannie Marie with us today, and we're learning about her 10 steps of being able to develop friendships with people from other cultural backgrounds and to be a witness to them, just not in terms of the traditional what we think of let me tell you about Jesus, but instead of being Jesus to them by developing a relationship. So Jeannie, you've talked to us about a couple of steps. What are some, we don't have time for all 10, but what are some of the other key steps that you could tell us about? And then with that, tell us some stories of how God has used those steps to draw people into relationship.
So one of the things that I would love for all of us to do is to have an international student friend.
Okay.
So easy to make an international student friend. They are coming to our country. They're lonely. Just think of your own kids who've gone to college, right? And they want an American friend. And how you can do this is simply by, and this is in my guide too, looking up the university near you, and there's faith-based organizations that work there. You just call them up and say, can I have a friend? And
Okay.
so this is what we did actually for Thanksgiving and Christmas too, is I called one of our faith-based organizations and just said, our families in our church want to host people for Christmas or Thanksgiving. Could you give us some people? They gave us like 60 kids, 60 kids. And all of our church people were like, yeah, we can have them for Thanksgiving. We already are doing a dinner, for Christmas.
Right.
And so they came to our houses. So we had a few Indian students, again, that Saudi students and Chinese. Those are the three that are going to mostly come, and people from South Korea too, who you can mobilize to reach out to people. And so they came to one dinner, and then we just started being friends with them. Okay, how can we take you to Walmart to get some food?
Well,
you need stuff, just college student stuff.
It's so simple. It's not complicated.
Yeah, our family's going camping. You want to come with us? We had two of our students who was a Sikh student, and also one who was, I think it was Hindu. Yeah. And so they didn't have anywhere to go for Christmas break. So I said, you know what, why don't you come and live with us for a couple days and for a week if you want.
Wow.
Literally, they were so excited. They came and stayed with us. And so we're doing the nativity set together. We're doing Christmas cookies. We, watched Christmas movies. We told them the Christmas story. They could see Jesus. I remember this was a couple years later because they're, friends. And one of them gave me the book, Kisses from Kate. It was just he said, you're just like her. Like, she worked in Africa and did all these things. Right. Okay. And I'm like, oh, wow. And all I did was, make Christmas cookies with him.
Right.
But it's this, okay, you are representing Jesus. And of course we use our words, but we also use our hands and we love people. So that's a good thing for everyone.
I love that, especially at this time.
Yes.
Yeah, this is really appropriate.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Another one?
No, yeah, we have time for another one.
Okay, here is a very strategic thing. I find that most people are like, I don't have time to do anything extra, right? And that's what we're busy Americans, right? So I would say, do your leisure. This is number 5 on my 10 tips. Do your leisure activities where internationals live. So I have people who maybe work out in a gym. Well, maybe you should change your gym so that you work out where all the refugees are located.
Okay, good.
The people working at Intel. What I did was, I was a mom with little kids. And so I did play dates and stuff, and we went to the park. And so I did some research, and I found out that there was a whole bunch of people from Intel that worked at Intel in Chandler, real close to us. So instead of going to the parks where I was, I drove 15 minutes and went to the parks in Chandler.
Wow. Oh, yes. Yeah. So simple.
Yes, and there were women there that there happened to be a bunch of Muslim women from, I think it was Turkey and different countries that happened to play with their kids at the park there. So we started going regularly to play with our kids at the park. And I invited other moms in, and this turned into, over time, this turned into, we decided to do an interfaith dialogue group because
Oh,
this didn't turn into it right away.
that happened in the context of the park?
Well, no, first they invited us to their homes,
Oh, okay.
right? Because people from other cultures, especially if they've not been here too long, are very hospitable. And they want you to come over, and they will invite you to tea. And so we started going to their homes,
Right.
meeting their families, and then we started discussing our faiths, right? And the common ground between our faiths, because our faiths are quite similar actually, and how we wanted to honor God together. And so we
Mm.
my friends and I actually did this more than I did. I was involved in some other things, but they turned it into an actual interfaith dialogue that eventually moved into the actual mosque. And so we had believing women, Christian women, meeting with Muslim women in the mosque
Wow.
once a month or so, and just discussing stories from scripture.
Yeah, simple but stretching.
Yes. And this is the thing, everyone who's listening, you're like, oh, I could never do that, right? Go into do that. But you can go to a park and say hello to the Muslim mom there,
Yeah.
and make friends. And it will turn into something if you're intentional about making friends.
Right. And that, to me, I think, Jenny, that's a key word is the intentional.
Intentional.
You don't just wait for it to happen spontaneously.
Yes.
I mean, you've got a goal in mind, and that is to build a relationship.
A
To
real
start a
relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
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 And that is true. I'm really glad you said that, because sometimes people say, oh, I'm going to wait till I do this short-term trip, or I'm going to move overseas, and then I'm going to help disciple people or make friends like this. And I'm like, you just need to put yourself where they are, and they are here. So you got it, but you got to drive. You may have to drive an hour to the refugees. You might have to drive half an hour to the international students, or 15 minutes to the immigrants, but put yourself where they are and then see what happens.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not something that you necessarily have to have a blueprint for,
Right.
but you just get started and let the Lord unpack what actually is going to happen.
Yeah. And just to remove the fear for everybody of talking to even just strangers. Nobody likes to talk to strangers. But I will say that if you talk to anyone who's from another country, you can talk about spiritual things just like you're talking about the weather. They love it.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I think sometimes we, Americans, are a little shy about talking about our faith, or about spiritual things. When the people we're talking to, they're not shy about that.
That's right.
At all. And we need to overcome that timidness, I think. So, yeah. Real quickly, tell us something that you personally have done recently, just a real fresh story of how you have reached out to develop friendships.
1 minute.
Yeah. So this is
And we only have 1 minute left.
1 minute. So I was speaking at a church in Pennsylvania, and they said, what can we do? And I said, let's go to a mosque and I'll take you there. So this was just last week. And we went to a Turkish mosque, and the women and the men went in separately. We went into the women, and they had Turkish food, and we ate together. And and then we found they want to focus on Bangladesh in that place. And we found a woman from Bangladesh who became friends with one of the people. And she said, there's 400 Bangladeshis here. You all have to come over.
Oh, wow.
And so I loved it, because I love the food, the people, the friendships, and to be able to facilitate a relationship that can continue is really important. So it was super fun.
Jeannie, thank you so much. Your enthusiasm is infectious. And I want to encourage everyone who's listening to take at heart the things that Jeannie has shared with us and put them into practice and be Jesus' hands and feet. Thank you, Jeannie, so much.
Thank you.